It's a Final World Cup Daily with Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon back here at Cardinia Park in Geelong, the Cattery, where we saw Namibia play the Netherlands and then we saw Sri Lanka in a very important game in the context of this group play the UAE. Jeffrey.
We are back in Geelong after wandering around a bit of the state yesterday, and we'll be wandering around more of the state of Victoria, that is, tomorrow. But today we're in Geelong, an hour down the road from Melbourne. We're bringing this World Cup podcast to you in conjunction with visitmelbourne.com, if you will, if you like being on the internet, which you must if you're listening to or watching this show. It is the gateway to this part of the world, and you can plan your Melbourne magic at visitmelbourne.com.
Even after getting home at nearly 3 o'clock last night, by the time we were done and I went on my own mystery tour driving you back here from Lorne and then returning to Birregurra, I was up this morning with Rach and Winnie and we went driving into the Otway Forest, which was absolutely delightful, and found a playground there at Lake Cole Lake. We might go back to Lake Cole Lake and do some filming at some stage. Very pretty part of the world. So visit victoria.com, visit melbourne.com and plan your Victoria visit. And go via Melbourne, of course. That's the gateway to the state at large, and Geelong is the gateway to the southwest, where we're spending the week. Jeff, the first of the two games today I'm going to deal with in a bit. We'll start with the second one because it's in a way more relevant to how this group might shake down, because Sri Lanka were beaten heavily in the opening fixture of the World Cup against Namibia. Their net run rate was down at like negative 2.75 or something like that. They needed to win and win big against the UAE. How did they fare?
Started well in the power play, 52 for 1. There was a 50 partnership between Dhananjaya and Nisanka, but then when Dhananjaya was run out, hat-trick time. Kartik Mayapan, leg spinner from the UAE, 3 in 3, first hat-trick of this T20 World Cup. And things didn't go so well for Sri Lanka after that. 152 for 8. Nisanka batted most of the way through, but luckily they had Dushyanta Chamira, the big fast bowler, too fast, too nasty for the UAE. Took 3 wickets for 4 runs in 2 overs at the start, and they slid away 73 all out in the end.
So they lose by 79 runs. Sri Lanka needed to win by 55 in order to get into the black as far as net run rate is concerned. They play their final game against Netherlands, who won earlier today, spoiler. A lot riding on that. It'll come down to net run rate on the assumption that Namibia beat the UAE. So it really did rely on Sri Lanka sort of setting a big total after batting first. And as you point out, after the hat-trick, there was a wobble. I mean, they have a really good 18th and 19th over after the hat-trick, so they got above 150, but
and even the
over
over
20.
Before the hat-trick went for 15, so there was the run out of Dhananjaya, then there was an expensive over with some wides and like 5 wides thrown in by Junaid Sadiq, who bowled so well the other night, bowled fiercely the other night, got taken to a bit tonight. So there were several opportunities through the Sri Lankan innings to go off. It's just that no one could go with Pathum Nisanka, and if he hadn't batted through the innings, he was out from the third last ball of the match, I'm going to say. From the opening position, he went all the way through, made 74 by the end, and if someone had been able to go a bit bigger with him at some stage, then they might have got that big net run rate boost.
Yeah, so 74 from 60 balls is what Nisanka finished with. At one point, halfway, they're 84 for 1. So, they're on track for, 160, 170, maybe even 180 if they get a good tail breeze. But he was batting with Rajapaksa at that juncture. No, it was Dhananjaya, then the run out, then Rajapaksa, then the hat-trick. So the Mayapan hat-trick, 2 of them with delicious, delightful, the sweetest googlies you'll see. One finding the outside edge of, who was it, Asalanka?
It was Asalanka, the left-hander. I mean, I thought all 3 of them were good deliveries because the first one dips on Rajapaksa, and he's the kind of player who likes to clear the front leg and boom it somewhere between deep mid-wicket and deep mid-wicket. That's generally the way things go. It dips on him, and so he's just threw the shot too early. He hits it to the outfielder, and then, as you say, Asalanka, the left-hander, the ball that just slides across him, kisses the outside edge. Off they all go. They were already celebrating like it was a hat-trick from the second in the sequence. And then the third one, I mean, Dasan Shanaka has been in very good touch over the last year or so. He's done a lot for Sri Lanka, being a leader in the white ball sides, and it almost wasn't even, maybe it was more of a top spinner than a googly. It's not like it turned back. It just kind of crept through that gap between
I think from that angle, it's a googly, given it did just enough, right? It's like when you see an outstanding test seamer like Josh Hazlewood. It's not about how much he moves it, it's about where he pitches it, and thus that's why that was the magic. The other part I loved about it, I wonder whether there's been an international hat-trick taken when bowling 4th change. I mean, it's probably happened, but he was the 6th bowler turned to when they were in a bit of strife. Like, things weren't going the way of the UAE. They weren't able to hold the run rate back the way they were with the Dutch on opening night. So, I mean, I mean, of course he's going to get a bowl at some stage, but he bowled his 4 overs, 3 for 14. They played him with utmost respect, predictably, after completing the hat-trick. It was a magic moment. As always, when there's an international hat-trick, I get bombarded with tweets. A reminder that my thing is about never having seen a test or a first-class hat-trick. You cleared that up on social media. However, I feel like we're in a pretty exclusive club. A UAE hat-trick at Kardinia Park.
At Geelong. Yeah.
I doubt we'll say that again.
Yeah, no dramas with the narrow wings for Karthik Mahapan. Didn't throw him at all. Obviously did his preparation. Probably marked out the ground with witches' hats, at Dubai Sports City or somewhere like that, and worked out how to deal with the narrow boundaries.
Yeah, having done that, the next thing he's going to do is get a Sheraton and kick it over a couple of silos. He's never going to leave Geelong. You'll see him in the Lyric nightclub later tonight or something like that, if that still exists. Right, so Sri Lanka get to 152 for 8.
Yep.
And UAE start well. They're none for 15 from 2 overs, and you're like, dare to dream stuff here, right?
There've been so many upsets. The lesser fancy teams have been knocking off the fancy teams. We thought, could this be another one? Will Sri Lanka go out in straight sets? No, they won't, because after those first 2 overs, along he comes.
Well, then they lose 4 for 6 in 1.5 overs. Not even that, perhaps. That was when you mentioned in your intro about Shamira hitting the stumps a couple of times.
Yes.
I think that Sri Lanka just did a really good job of bowling straight. So Shamira, 2 bowls and a leg before, and then Hasaranga, who bowled as good a googlies as we saw earlier. All 3 of his wickets were hitting the stumps. 2 were leg before, 1 was bowled. But again, it goes to that plan they had on a track that was slower than the other night. It was not the same pitch. They're rotating between the 2 drop-in pitches they have at Kardinia Park. But nevertheless,
very different too. One's very green and grassy, and the other one's very brown and muddy. And they're going back to the grassy one for the 3rd day of matches here, because they were watering that one tonight. So I'm sure they're going back to the grassy strip. And
I'm glad they are, because it made for higher scoring cricket, right? Because today was more attritional, even by T20 standards.
Good old-fashioned Test cricket.
And when we talk a bit about the first game, there'll be some numbers that bear that out. It was just harder to find the rope.
Sure.
And that goes to, obviously when it's quicker, or not obviously, but in short form cricket, when it is quicker, typically easier for batters to get underneath it and trust their swinger fraction more.
Yeah. I mean, it's like almost everyone who tries to hit a 6 holes out, and almost everyone who tries to hit a 4 finds that the ball stops inside the boundary rope.
Yeah.
So it's a frustrating time for boundary hitting, and there was a little bit of a flurry from the UAE tail, but we'll come to that more in the Hall of Fame.
I think that's a good idea, because there's definitely a moment from the tail that's going to qualify for that. We have another game to deal with, though, don't we?
The first one. So that was between Netherlands and Namibia. Battle of the Ends. Who would triumph in the Battle of the Ends? And it was important because Namibia had beaten Sri Lanka in their first game. So, if they got a win, they were pretty close to through. Almost would have been fancying their chances of going through. Yeah,
I suspect that's right. So my 30-second summary starts by saying Namibia won the toss and batted, which was a sign again that they detected that making runs would be advantageous in slower conditions, rather. And it didn't work. So they were held up by the Dutch seamers, who bowled it into the turf, running their fingers down the seam. They only got to 121. There was a 62-ball passage where they didn't strike a boundary in Namibia. Netherlands got off to a flyer at one stage. They were about 50 for none in the 6th over, but then the wickets came, indeed a clump of them. JJ Smith took 2 in an over, and it was a squeeze. They needed 20 odd runs from the last 3 overs, and they held their nerve for the second time, as they did against the UAE in a similar kind of chase. And on this occasion, it was Baz de Leader who was there on 30 not out at the end, and once again with Tim Pringle, he's been in there at the end of both successful chases. They win with a couple of balls to spare,
collecting a few Tim Pringles once again, and he's a very uninspiring looking character with the bat. It doesn't look like he's going to be the guy to win you games with the bat, but somehow he's found a way.
It's the prod method.
Yeah. It's all about, he bowls beautifully, tall left armour, lovely shape on the ball, gets it to dip, gets it to turn when he wants it to. But with the bat, they've been relying on him a bit too much, I think. I think the Dutch have been a bit lucky, the lucky Dutch, because, and that sounds like some sort of gymnastics move or something. Time to produce the lucky Dutch. But they've been at points where they're about to crap their dacks, and then they don't quite crap the dacks.
Yeah, so, the fact that they got off to such a good start, I was thinking, here's the Netherlands' opportunity to earn some net run rate themselves. Upon winning tonight, you could say they've got 1 foot in the semi-final. In the final 12, the group stage. If not for what Sri Lanka have done and effectively overtaking them on that measure, noting that Sri Lanka in their last game play
UAE.
No, they play the
played
Netherlands.
UAE. They play the Netherlands.
Which will be significant.
Yes,
of course.
Quite.
If the Netherlands do the job on Sri Lanka, it's a moot point.
Netherlands have got 2 wins. If they lose to Sri Lanka will have 2 wins. And if Namibia beat the UAE, Namibia will have 2 wins. So there'll be 3 teams with 2 wins, and it will all come down to net run rate.
Yeah, which is why we keep talking about net run rate, which we don't understand. We've covered cricket for a long time. All we know is that when you get bowled out when chasing,
if you don't use up all your overs, that's bad. That's all we know. All we know is that's bad. We don't know why it's bad or by how much it's bad. It's to do with, it's like your score gets extrapolated as if it were over 20 overs.
Yeah,
I think that's what happened.
So Netherlands get off to this flyer with Vic Ramjit Singh, who smacked a couple of sixes in the 3rd over of the chase, I think it was.
After fielding horribly. Probably the worst fielding performance I've ever seen from someone who's like young and fit, and who's a batter. Like normally your really bad fielders are gangly fast bowlers and I don't know where their limbs are going and their legs over here and their legs went that way and their head went that way. But this guy, I mean, he's coordinated enough to be able to hit the ball over the rope for 6, but he can't put his hands in the way of the ball. How is it that you can put the bat in the way of the ball, but you cannot put your own hands, which are attached to your body? You use those hands to hold the bat that you hit the ball with, but if you take the bat out of them, you can't put the hands where the ball goes. It is extraordinary. He let through, just balls rolling straight at him, and he's like, ooh, gone through my legs for the 3rd time this over.
When he got out, it was against the flow of play in the 9th over for 39 from 31 balls. He was there with Max O'Dowd. We got a message during the week asking if he was Australian. He's a Kiwi, but he looks like he's Australian with that long blonde hair, like he's just rolled off, from the surf coast or something like that.
He sounds like an American video game character.
Yeah, Max O'Dowd.
Max O'Dowd.
And in the squeeze
Navy
begins,
SEAL.
much as it was in Namibia's middle overs where they couldn't find the boundary, so it was for the Dutch as well. I mentioned the double wicket over, so that was the 16th, which left them in a really tough spot. And again, it was Baz de Leede, who bowled so well too. I want to go back to the first innings. So it was Fred Klassen, it was Tim van der Gerten, it was Baz de Leede, it was Paul van Meeker, and all of them bowled with an economy rate of about 4 or 5. All of them found a way into the book at different stages through the innings, and all of them contributed to that squeeze.
They all bowled like county cricket professionals in May,
Well, yeah, except and all of them have county cricket experience, I'd suggest. I think all of them have played there at one stage or another, and those conditions suited bowling it into the pitch, fingers across the seam, and thus they were able to make it tough. And the Namibian side just didn't have. I mean, we saw Freilich take off a couple of days ago.
Yeah,
he was unable to do that today.
He did his best, and I think he played. It was a bit like the George Munsey innings for Scotland. He went, okay, it's too hard to hit boundaries, but I'm just going to stick it out and make sure that I'm here at the end at about a runner ball. He did hit one massive 6.
Yeah, he hit 43 from 48. It kind of, in hindsight, looks like a match-losing innings because he faced 48 deliveries. But in context,
but if
someone needed to be the anchor.
If he'd got another 10 from the other end even, then it could probably have been a match-winning innings.
Yeah, the only other point here, and Andrew Nixon made this on Twitter, is that I think if they had their time again, they might have retired him out. They might have gone to David Wiese a fraction earlier than... I think Wiese came in with 10 balls left in the innings. And did JJ Smith even bat?
Don't think so.
I don't think he hit 30-odd the other night in a hurry. In terms of the allocation of resources, speaking like the CricViz guys, that would have been a circumstance where you could go, it's in our interest to change it up and see what's possible with the guys who were there to finish. In the end, their finishers barely got a bite of the cherry.
It would also have given us the opportunity to say, Wiese good, he's David Wiese good, which sadly we've missed that chance. We can never do that again.
All right, I think it's probably time for us to gallop along to the Final Word Hall of Fame for today. And there were no shortage of options. Jeff, I'll throw to you first. I've got a long list.
Okay. Well, I've got a long hit, which was Junaid Siddique, who, as we said earlier, bowled so well in the first game, didn't bowl so well tonight, but came out with the bat in hand at number 10 and said, I think I'll have a little bit of fun. And bear in mind, he's facing Dushmantha Chameera, who had, 3 for 4 from his first spell. Then he went for 3 from his third over, so he had 3 for 7, still pretty fierce-looking figures. I mean, Hasaranga finished with 3 for 8 from his 4 overs, remind you of that. And then he comes on to bowl his fourth over, trying to knock over the last wicket and finish off the game. And Junaid Siddique says, I'm going to hit you out of the ground, my friend. I've been watching Liam Livingstone at the Gabba, and I would like to hit one over the Reg Hickey stand and out of Cardinia Park. Clip off the pads, huge swing, and it just soared. It was beautiful. It was, for a moment there, Junaid Siddique was free.
It was 109 metres is what that 6 was measured on by that'll comfortably be the biggest 6 of the stage we're in at the moment. I'm not sure how big Livingston's was yesterday. They probably weren't measuring for that, and there'll be bombs like that later in the comp.
Well, Singh hit a couple into the upper tier of the red
back to back, wasn't it? Yeah. So they were going. I've got a few for you. How about Mariah Erasmus in the first game today as the third umpire?
You were going to say Mariah Carey. I was very excited for a minute. What was Mariah Carey up to today? I know Rihanna goes to the cricket.
Yeah, I meant earlier to mention the Namibian Erasmus who came from the shadows to take a good catch like that. The Erasmus in the shadows. Yeah. That'll make sense to about 12 people. He said no bat involved when there was a gigantic spike on Ultra Edge. Joel, I've missed the inside edge initially. He went back and corrected his work and had the second look at Ultra Edge and fixed that up. Tim Pringle's glasses that he bowls in, he's pretty much bowling in a pair of Wayfarers. I said on Twitter that he's got better bowling glasses than Greg Matthews had a bowling cap. Remember when Greg Matthews would change caps to bowl in when getting around in television games in the early 90s?
So like sort of risky business style? Like, is he going to roll his dad's Porsche into a lake later on tonight? His dad's Chris Pringle,
slide across.
former New Zealand international. I really liked. Excuse me, I swallowed a frog. I really liked Basil Hamid's catch.
Yes.
To dismiss Patam Nasanka, where he went running across, huge dive, both hands, mid-air, beautiful stuff, and then Zahul Khan, the bowler, ran up and just kissed him on the forehead. It was a nice little moment. He's like, "Thank you for taking that lovely catch for me."
I had that on my list as well. He took 3 catches, Basil, and according to Andrew Nixon, he's the first Basil to play in a World Cup.
Really?
I thought that was a good little stat.
Right.
There's a Basil who plays for India at the moment, Basil Thumpy.
Basil Thumpy. So that's a great name for a cricketer.
I think it's pronounced Thumpy, not Thumpy. It depends how
how
the A can be
Yeah. Let's go with Thumpy because I like Thumpy. It's like there are some good cricket names about clouting and swatting and that sort of thing.
How about Ben Shikongo, who in his first over on Sunday took a double wicket maiden, and we celebrated him accordingly on the podcast. Today, his first over, 2 sixes, none for 18, didn't get another trundle. So returning to earth rather rapidly than the Namibian seamer.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's me done. My list of Final Word Hall of Fame moments has been catalogued, all for Visit Victoria, Visit Melbourne, Visit Victoria.com.
Visit us.
It gets you to the
Come
same
to my
place
if you want. I'll be here.
Gets you to the same place. I'm going back to my place. You're going back to your place. Tomorrow, we're back on the road on the Final Word World Cup Daily. Thanks for listening. If you're enjoying what we are doing, if you enjoy what we do, full stop, patreon.com/The Final Word. We have an episode of the weekly show dropping tomorrow as well because we can't stop and we won't stop. Adam Collins, Jeff Lemon. The winners today, Sri Lanka and the Netherlands. We'll do it all again tomorrow when they play at Hobart.